the infant is wrapped in a baby blanket and left to die. There's a dead baby in her closet.
When she put that baby in the plastic bag, she threw the cleaning material on top of it. She threw trash on her baby.
She was still performing stunts as a cheerleader while pregnant. How did she keep the baby a secret? How did the baby end up wrapped in a blanket in her closet? Do you think it wrapped itself up and went in the closet and died? Denial. It ain't just a river in Egypt. I'm also very curious. Straight out to Dr. Bethany Marshall joining us, high-profile psychoanalyst, author of Deal Breaker on Amazon. You can see her now on Peacock and find her at drbethanymarshall.com. Dr. Bethany, I'm also intrigued. What does it mean, if anything, that you are a self-proclaimed real-life Barbie? I'm talking about the Barbie doll.
This young woman's life is wrapped in fantasy, not reality. The fantasy of having a baby seems a lot more compelling to her than the reality of a baby. The fantasy of being Barbie is a lot more compelling to her than the reality of who she is as a mother and out in the world. I think wrapping an infant in a blanket and then putting it in a bag is just the fantasy of being a nice person. I don't think it has anything to do with attachment towards the infant. If anything, she's covering her tracks and trying to make sure nobody finds that child. It is ultimately a selfish act, not a caring act.
Okay, Dr. Bethany, you got me drinking from the fire hydrant here. You gave me so much, I've got to parse it. Number one, can we stick with Barbie? You said,
Barbie.
I was writing as fast as I could, the fantasy of being Barbie to her was better than being Laken Snelling's. Okay, now wait a minute.
Yes.
What does it mean to be Barbie? It's a plastic doll with fake breasts. Why do you want to be that?
Because Barbie is beautiful. Barbie is desirable. Barbie is sexually attractive in the world. And the idea that she would be that person, it's like she's wrapping herself in an image, an external image, rather than really focusing on who she is. Does she attend a church? Is she kind?
Bethany, wait. Can I see that video again of her in the faux? I guess that's, no, the faux, that's very similar to a Barbie outfit my sister had.
That's right.
Okay. I was trying to dissect the Barbie dolls, and I dismembered all of my sister's Barbie dolls. That was a dark day. That said, I remember that outfit. Barbie had an outfit like that with, faux leopard spots. Okay. Just wanted to point that out, Dr. Bethany. I don't know what your Barbie lore is, but I distinctly recall an outfit like that with the matching stilettos. And this is when I was a little girl. The stilettos were in then as well, at least for Barbie. Now, I'm sorry, back to who wants to be Barbie?
Who wants to be Barbie as somebody who's more living in fantasy than reality? Hey, Nancy, that sound you just played, the inside of her apartment was pink. She lived in a Barbie place. This is a woman who lives in a fantasy world, not a reality world, okay? Barbie is just that. It's a doll. It's not a real person. She does not live her life like a real person. She's living, it's like cosplay of being Barbie. I'm wondering, would she go to a church? Does she have friends? Is she kind to people? Does she like children in real life? Or was the fantasy of being pregnant and the fantasy of being a mom much more compelling than the reality of changing diapers, holding a baby? Babies have needs, and that reality may have been just a little too much for her.
And I want to clear one thing up, Dr. Bethany Marshall. You can be anything and have played with Barbies as a little girl. My sister that had the Barbies, she's a brainiac. I tried to read something she published. It was just a bunch of formulas with, like elements. And I'm like, okay, that was great. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with playing with Barbies
No.
when you're a child. I mean, it can be fun. But this is a grown woman that says she's a real life Barbie. Okay, you know what? I've gone down the Barbie trail way too long. Okay, that's not going to help anybody at trial. Joining me right now, renowned medical examiner, the chief medical examiner of Tarrant County, that's Fort Worth, Texas. Esteemed lecturer at the Burnett School of Medicine at TCU and star of a hit new podcast, Mayhem in the Morgue. Dr. Kendall Crowns joining us. What does that tell me? They don't have a COD yet, cause of death. Let me read between the lines. That tells me there was no visible COD. Like you couldn't just look at the baby and say, oh, the baby was bludgeoned dead, or the baby was shot, or the baby was stabbed, or ligature strangulation, or manual strangulation. Maybe even you might need a microscopic exam to determine if there were petechiae, hemorrhage to the eyes. But that tells me that the COD was none of those things. What's happening, Dr. Kendall Crowns?
So typically with the babies that are found in trash bags, you first have to determine if they were born alive. There are certain things that you can look for. One of them is gestational age. If they're under 22 weeks, they probably couldn't have survived being born. If they have this thing called maceration, which is a overall kind of reddish decoloration and sloughing of the skin of the baby, you know they died in utero. And then finally, do they have any major birth defects like they have no brain or something of that nature? Then you go from there and you have to figure out if you determine that they could have been born alive, then you have to determine if they actually took a breath. And that can be a number of tests that are actually not all that accurate. There's the float test with the lung, but that can be disrupted by decomposition or CPR.
Wait. You know, Dr. Kendall Crowns, I appreciate your vast knowledge. I also appreciate all of your episodes on Mayhem in the Morgue. I do. I've listened to them. They're amazing. But could you please dummy down, man? You said, oh, unless they did a flotation test. What? Not everybody works in the morgue. Not everybody knows what you're talking about. You just rattled off about 15 medical phrases. I'm surprised you didn't throw Latin at me. Could you just start over and speak regular people talk, please? If not for the listener, for me, please start over, if you don't mind.
So the main thing, like I was talking about, is they're going to be looking for any signs that the child was living when it was born. So did it take a breath? And if it took a breath, the lungs will fill up with air and they could potentially float if you put them in water. So you could say, oh, that they breathed if the lungs float in water.
How big are baby lungs? How big are they? And then dunked in water. How big is an infant's lungs?
Well, it depends on how old the baby is gestationally. If they are
newborn.
If they are a newborn, their lungs are about, a couple inches maybe.
Dr. Kendall Crowns, you're saying one of the first things you do to determine COD, if it's not immediately visible with the naked eye, is you do a float test on the lungs. What that means is the baby is sliced open, its lungs are removed, and they're dunked in water. What? What kind of water? What is that in? A pan? A sink? What?
It's tap water, and it's in basically a big cup.
So you do a lung test, and if the lungs float, that means they had air in them. That means that baby was born alive. Is that where you're going with that?
That's correct. I mean, if they've taken a breath, the lungs will float, but it could also mean they were given CPR. It could also mean there's decompositional gas formation. So one of the other things you'll do with the flotation test is take the liver, take a section of the liver and place it in the water as well to see if it will float, to show that there is or is not decomposition.
Okay, wait a minute. I've never heard this before. A float test on the baby's liver, so now the abdomen is cut out as well. Okay, why would you do a float test on a liver? Why would there be air in the liver?
There would be no air in the liver, so if the liver doesn't float, you know that there is no decomposition. But if it does float, then it puts into question of whether the lungs are floating because of decomposition or because there's air in them. So then you have to go to microscopic analysis.
Okay, so you compare the float test of the liver to the float test of the lungs. And if the liver goes down and the lungs go up, that indicates the lungs are floating because the baby breathed, not because of decompositional gases. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so that's what's happening to the baby. What else will be examined to determine the COD of this baby? Because this all hinges on the COD.
So what else will be done is microscopic analysis, or looking at sections of the tissue under a microscope, looking for any disease processes. Also, you'll be looking at the lungs there as well, looking to see if the air sacs or the alveoli in the lungs have filled up with air. The other thing you'll be looking at is the placenta, if it's available. Looking at the placenta, looking for any evidence of hemorrhage or loss of oxygen or infarction or infection of the membranes. You'll be looking at the umbilical cord to see if it's normally formed, if it was wrapped around the child's neck, or if it has inflammation as well. And then you'll also be looking for any evidence of trauma, birth trauma, where like the shoulder got stuck and they had to pull the child very hard, fracturing the shoulder or separating the neck. You'll also be looking for inflicted trauma, like crushing of the ribs, breaking of the extremities or the long bones of the extremities, or crushing of the skull.